Trading and investing. We're getting ready here today to go ahead and do what we do best. Make sure we take a look across markets, stay on the right side, and do our best to navigate whatever is taking place. It looks like we actually might be witnessing today, here at the end of July, a big inflection point. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about potential ramifications. You know, it's funny as we get started here on this Monday. By the way, if you're new here, welcome. And if you're not, welcome back. As I look at some of the past sessions and I go back to what was the previous Friday, and I talked about, do you think the markets, do I think that the markets have come too far too fast? And in that session, I talked about how we were heavily positioned on the long side, and I talked about seasonalities. I talked about some of the potential, let's say, unknown ahead of us, including the August 1st tariff deadline. And we talked about setting our expectations well coming into the summer and then through the later part of September. And that video was really well received in so much as that it's really rare to get 100% likes. This is a video that has 100% likes. A lot of videos, specifically when we get into like the four before it, when we're talking about Bitcoin, we're talking about, you know, what our expectations are, like how we've continued to navigate like no other. No, and those usually have like 99.5, very high ratings. Another one that had 100% was this one over here. The bond market shift is the curve steepening engineered. That one had 100% likes. And this one over here, this one on Friday, this is interesting because I get a read from all of you. And then I get to kind of take that read in, and then I get to either double down on what my view is and let you know, or you know, and this one had a very low liking percentage, 97.3, which is very low. So a lot of people, I think, might be supporting the idea of something like, you know what, Jordan, you're absolutely crazy if you don't think we're going to have a correction in risk assets. Now, a correction in risk assets is what to you? I don't know. You know, I'm trying to think of what like a definition of a correction, and I think on the Nasdaq that's about 9%, 8-9%. That's considered a correction on the Nasdaq. And well, I don't think that we talked about anything to the degree in that video, or whether or not there could be a pullback. Actually, we set our expectations for the summer and especially the first 3 weeks of September as seasonality strongly point to during that particular period, there could be a little bit of, you know, flatness, which is choppiness. We continue towards the top end of this deviation though with seasonalities. And the thing is that now we do have a little bit of further clarity. The US is, you know, largest trading partner, the EU, sorry, outside of China, has gone ahead and they've been able to come to an agreement on trade, and one that heavily favors the U.S. So this is a little bit of further clarity. And we talked about if we see what looks like happens next is that the U.S. just blanket tariffs all those who have not made deals. The China situation has been kicked down the line. Another 90 days pause in effect, and they both have heavy leverage over each other. The Chinese with the rare earth materials, and the U.S. obviously with the degree of the trade that takes place with China. And coming into September, the first few weeks, you know, that's sorry, that's end of August. First few weeks of September tend to be one that, you know, there's a lot of uncertainty. Everyone comes back, and you know, could we have a correction in risk assets during this period? Well, not only could we set expectations to watch out for it. That's what we did over here. Is when I said, do I think the markets have come too far too fast? We just set instead of like getting FOMO, letting FOMO get a hold of us as we're fully positioned here, or almost fully positioned, strongly positioned, and holding open positions that continue to move into profit, just to like bring ourselves and make sure that we are very level in our expectations as we approach this particular time of year. And yeah, a correction on risk assets of, within normal range, I mean, of course, that's well in the cards. Are we going to see a double dip, right? Are we going to see a 20% or greater correction? And you know what? It seems very unlikely that that is in the cards. It seems that for whether or not you look at the macro wins here, and you see that the U.S. government moving to what they're just looking for, like heavy growth. We have to go ahead and do our best to grow our way out of this debt to GDP situation. And I saw a poll this morning, and that poll said, Luke, I loved your little insight over the weekend as far as MicroStrategy, MSTR, and I believe it was, what is it, STRK? Not positive about that, but that's something that I actually wanted to look into further deeper with all of you, which we're not going to do today, but that's heavy on my mind. And if you make any progress with that, let's go ahead and take a look deeper into that. Where were we going here with this conversation? Correction into risk assets. For whatever reason, people must be thinking that the situation is a little bit dire. And to me, it continues to be actually looking more and more conducive for a strong continuation of the momentum. I remember coming back not too far ago, and I could say that when we were, and pull up over here, when we were like, I wish I could pull up the tweet. I'm going to say in May, and I tweeted out that retail remains undefeated, front running the CTAs, front running institutional money, front running hedge funds. And a lot of feedback on that particular comment at the time was, oh, it's too soon to say. They could wind up getting they could wind up getting wrecked over here, and we're probably going to be testing those April lows. And most people, or not most people, a large degree of the feedback at the time was not really supportive of retail basically being the first to position themselves out of the correction in April and on the right side ahead of everyone. And it's true, retail has become one of not only the most significant players in the market, but one that is, you got to be proud. That's for sure. STRC stretch, the new issuance here, huh? Okay. I have to take a strong look at it. I'm not yet familiar with the product myself. I'm not yet familiar with the product, so I'm a little behind on that aspect. What a weird way to start the week on this little intro into the situation that continues to develop. And I saw a poll this morning, and whether it's true or not, I don't know. I don't trust anything. Let me check Zero Hedge. It might have been on Zero Hedge. Yep. And this is relevant. I'll tell you why. Look, Wall Street Journal. Okay, Wall Street Journal. What type of like leaning do they have, or are they supportive of Republicans? I don't think so. If they are, please let me know in the comments. I'm just trying to always look whenever I see any type of data presented to find out, well, what's the intention here? Is it something that's trustworthy? I don't trust anything or anyone. You got to go ahead and obviously look to verify. But what this poll is suggesting by the Wall Street Journal is that right now we're looking at, obviously, no one loves either political party for sure. And then you can see over here that right now, currently, Democrats remain well out of favor when we talk as we're moving in towards midterm elections next November. And the importance of this here, and why I bring it up, is simply because the only risk that I see in the foreseeable future to the markets continuing to run as the US government talks about, look, we're going to align our fiscal policy towards heavy growth, would be that if the Republicans were able to lose the House or the Senate in the midterms. And then you come into what would be like a lot more gridlock. And at that particular point in time, that's potentially something that could put a little bit of a squash on the forces in motion over here. That's why I bring this up. I mean, it's like skating on thin ice. You don't ever want to talk about politics with people because, especially in the US, people are so polarized. But we have to discuss markets. We have to be able to go ahead and form our view, and then be able to, when provided with new information, be able to take it in and to reassess. That's what we're here for, and that's what we do. They own a bunch of land. Is it No, it's not Murdoch. It's the old guy from CNN. Who is the head face of the Democratic Party? I would still say it's people. Guys, I don't want to talk politics with you all. You know how that goes. But if you ask me who's the face of the Democratic Party, I would say Obama. And cricket, 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 cricket. He is the face of the Democratic Party, I think. Who's this guy over here? He's a Democrat. Is he the face of the Democratic Party? No. What about what's her name? Head of intelligence, Tulsi. She a Democrat? Yeah, she was running for the nominee of the Democratic Party for president. Oh yeah. She's not with the current administration. Current administration has a lot of former Democrats in it, doesn't it? Is she the face of the Democratic Party? Anyway, enough of that nonsense. And that's all nonsense. But we have to take a look about what type of ramifications that nonsense will have on our current view of the markets. This week, by the way, is a really big week as we move into big tech earnings. We're looking at Meta and Microsoft on Wednesday, two of the tech giants reporting. Obviously, markets are going to be looking at what their CapEx spending continues to be. I think Meta, who's spending a ton of money out on talent, is going to continue to be spending. Mark has made his view and strategy very clear. Microsoft, you have to watch, right? And that's very important. That's a sign of what potentially could be put a little bit of weakness into the whole AI narrative. I don't expect that happens. That's something to be aware of and something that we will focus in on. And then, of course, we have the day after on Thursday, we have the trifecta of Amazon. And Amazon's important because, the tariff situation could definitely be weighing on Amazon's earnings. More importantly, you have to watch how the consumer is doing. Amazon, largest retailer in the US, is a good proxy to find out what is going on with the consumer. I suppose Walmart, to a lesser degree, in so much as that, well, whatever. I don't want to get into that. But if you're looking at like in the US and you have, let's say, 3 tiers, and you could say that the top tier actually the amount of spending in relation to the bottom tier, Walmart. How about Costco? We could use Costco as a very balanced read on the US consumer. And then we have Apple, right? Apple could be ready for some surprises to the upside, I could imagine. And MicroStrategy is going to be a big one that we're all interested in. And right now, we look at MicroStrategy is currently out of the market. Look at this over here. This is a nice little retest that's currently in play. MicroStrategy, this is not a good chart for us to look at to view it. Let me jump over and get a better one so that we could take a better look at what's going on here with MicroStrategy. This is, by the way, US dollar, Japanese yen on the dollar strength, getting ready here for what I consider to be a very strong breakout opportunity. That's something to keep an eye on. We'll come back to the US dollar in 1 second. I don't know. This is, by the way, just like I'm just throwing stuff out there right now as we cover it all. This is the repo. And what's interesting to me is that we could see that the repo market is maintaining that $150 billion level left, but the amount of new issuances, which I expected as soon as the debt ceiling debacle was finished, that the Treasury was going to be out there raising their funds in the Treasury general account and, bidding up about $500 billion worth, bringing back towards 850 billion dollars, currently closer to 300 billion. And they have not been, offering new issuances, which is strange and weird to me. I don't know what the playbook is. And they did, by the way, they offered last week some of the longer term. It was greater than 10 years. Trump said no more debt beyond 10 years. And Bessent was like, no. And there was plenty of foreign demand for it, but we're not seeing much new issuances. And why we're not seeing much new issuances, we are seeing the repo on I guess going out. I would expect if there was a bunch of new issuances being offered that this would get drained very quickly. We're not seeing many new issuances offered, and we're still seeing this kind of coming under pressure. So I'm watching for that. I was looking for this. This is Coinbase, and I wanted from Coinbase to be able to go to MicroStrategy. So let me come over here and just take a look with you all. And we're on a 3-day. I'm going to come back down over here to the daily. Just trying to get a feel for what's going on. We have our mega pattern, right? And then we have the drawdown correction, the lift into the runway, the launch pad, and has since been taken off. And we've had a full retest. There it is right here. I was going to go horizontal. And we were looking at this together on Friday last week, so this should be familiar to you. You can see that in January, this what was resistance is now over here and is holding as support. Obviously, coming into earnings, after earnings, we want to see this level hold. Obviously, Saylor keeps hitting the ATM. We know what Saylor's playbook here. He's not really concerned so much about the rising of MicroStrategy's share price as he is about accumulating Bitcoin. And if you're an investor in MicroStrategy, then you want to be aligned with how the CEO and what playbook he's running. He's thinking long term. He's thinking about accumulating Bitcoin. I think he thinks that $118,000 Bitcoin is cheap, and he's doing his best to accumulate as much as possible. And if you're a shareholder, you have to be thinking longer term with him. Now, as far as trading, right? And just jumping back over here, and we're on, sorry, this should be on IBIT. We were looking at modeling over the weekend. Hold on one second here. All right, back to IBIT, and then I wanted to bring up MicroStrategy. And MicroStrategy currently here, we took a nice position out of what was the launch and, come back in for the retest out of the market. And we're just waiting here. If we get that resumption up, we'll be back in. I guess my whole expectations are a little bit suppressed for the immediate gratification of MicroStrategy share price. However, that's why we have, if Bitcoin is able to make a mega leg up, if we see Bitcoin trading between 130, 140,000, obviously MicroStrategy is gonna be, following in kind. As far as our positioning though, right now we're still waiting on Tesla. Tesla and MicroStrategy are both out of the market. And then I just wanted to come in a little bit further with you. Come over here to Tesla, and Tesla here is well bid on the session today. And then we're just waiting on the CTM filter to allow us here to be also entering on the buy side. And then we would be, assuming MicroStrategy also enters, 100% into the market, just checking in on the equities. And you could see that currently NVIDIA holding open position 22% into profit. Tesla on the sidelines waiting for that CTM filter to trigger. MicroStrategy on the sidelines after taking that small little profit. And then we're looking at FNGU ahead of big tech earnings this week off of Google's earnings, holding open position here 2% into profit. And then TQQQ is holding 34% into profit right now, and it feels good, well positioned. Same thing here with Bitcoin and crypto. Bitcoin on the swing trading 8-hour time frame, taking a small loss over here into the market, out of the market, 0.5% loss on the trade. Bitcoin bull runs still holding open position, 19% into profit. Cardano 15% trade. Solana here back in 1%, and Ethereum over here continues to hold this position, 47% into profit. Let's take a look at Ethereum right now, and let me just jump over. And Ethereum, as we're waiting to see, or I'm waiting to see, $1,000 off price discovery, and whether or not Ethereum here, as we have a new changing dynamic with a treasury corporate bid, $2 billion have so far been attained by Bitmine. Tom Lee and Peter Thiel's new, new, let's say, endeavor as far as stacking Ethereum and holding on the balance sheet, 4,800 after what was a massive, massive grab and sell off over here. And I'm hoping that we get to break out and above. I want to talk about the gold. I want to talk about the gold. I want to talk about Bitcoin. I want to talk about the FOMC and the week ahead. Let's all do that. Who's the guy in the corner of my screen? What is going on over here? So Microsoft's going bankrupt one day. Tesla should have held their Bitcoin. Remember when Elon was forced to sell their Bitcoin, May 2021? Guy really messed things up for a lot of people under false premises. He's like Bitcoin mining is not, I don't know, eco-friendly or whatever have you, as if like, the carbon needed to go ahead and form Tesla batteries, storage batteries, and solar panels was unbelievable. That Bitcoin now would be worth $2 billion, the amount that he sold. You know what, Elon, you got to get with it. You got to get with it. Checking out over here, looking forward. Why is Mara doing so poorly? Do we have Matt? Oh, is Mara on deck for earnings, by the way? Hold on one second. Trying to scan my eyes over here, and I don't see it. I don't know. So I'm trying to think, why did I even think that Mara might have potential earnings over here? If anyone sees it, let me know. Maybe it's Riot I was thinking of. I don't know. I don't know about that. What's going on with Mara? Mara owns what? 50,000 Bitcoin? Is that right? One of the top holders of Bitcoin. Here you go. Mara, after the close tomorrow, does have earnings, and we'll see. I feel like that the miners themselves this cycle have seen a lot of unfavorable lack of interest, and maybe that's an opportunity. We look at Riot, and Riot is flirting here potentially with what could be a nice breakout of a similar pattern that MicroStrategy is trying to break out of. Trying to get a feel over here. And oh, that looks a lot different on the log. And then the linear. And yeah, Riot is trying to do its thing, and earnings this week, and you have to wonder if I wonder, or I believe that you go back, previous cycle over here, and you saw these mega moves on the miners, but what we were seeing at that point was Bitcoin actually going, making some sharp price appreciation, right? Going from, specifically in this area, as you see Mara go, I mean, what, 20x? You see Bitcoin going from, roughly 10,000 to 60,000 in a few months. Bitcoin is right now quite stable. It's well within the sustainable channel. It's not making any type of vertical moves. So there's like, okay, is there a reason to be speculating like out there? Um, this consolidation looks quite formidable. It looks like what was Bitcoin as you came into 2024, right? All the way till November, the massive long consolidation pattern that Bitcoin had been in. Just to give you a quick visual of it, as best as I could, would be from, I guess, right here. And this is the pattern I'm talking about, that long consolidation over here on Bitcoin. And that went on for quite a while. This is starting in March and then all the way through November. It's a similar consolidation that's occurring here on Riot. It's very long. It's looks to me to be potentially setting up here for a big move. Is that depending on what happens with Bitcoin? I want to take a look at the dollar and Bitcoin, and just lay out there what I believe could be something that would be unexpected. And again, if the dollar continues here, it looks like the dollar here off of specifically what was our speculation. We said once trade deals are finally worked out, I expect a bid into the dollar. That's what we're seeing today off of the EU trade deal. Whether or not that's lasting, that's another question. But I believe if we get the dollar to go bid, that is going to be really bullish for risk assets. And that goes contrary to popular belief, in so much as that normally when you see a big move off in the dollar, that's usually followed by a very favorable move on risk assets. We've seen the dollar come off obviously significantly in the first part of this year, off 11%. We haven't really seen risk have such a favorable move. Is that a little bit lagging? Obviously, when the dollar is weak, it puts, it takes a lot of pressure off of global liquidity. When the dollar's bid, it puts pressure onto global liquidity. We're going to look at that together today in 1 second and try to form some opinions, or at least make some observations about what comes next. I can't even look at TJT. Well, I mean, I'll do it, but you know, it's all I think about that is, anyway, let's take a look at it. So Riot, has it been lacking, or Mara, I should say. I went from Mara to Riot, and you guys are interested in what's going on with Riot here, and just trying to. So Mara looks like a lot better situation, first of all, than Riot. Is that true? As far as how far are you off over here, the 2021 high, right? And they're very close to each other, actually. They're very close. Is it a similar pattern that we're seeing? Actually, it looks like Riot is. I don't know why. It doesn't make any sense. It looks like Riot, from just a pure TA standpoint, might be looking a little bit more favorable here, right? You can see right on the verge of what is a breakout over here, and it looks. I don't see the same love here on Mara. Trying to figure out, that would a breakdown over here. That's bearish continuation pattern. If that breaks down, that could be some further pressure. I'm trying to see what a breakout looks like. I'm having a little bit of trouble of finding that. So, I mean, I'm not really seeing it. I suppose we could look for that. I'm trying to make sense of why the miners are lagging here, specifically here, Mara. Superficially, with I get what that means is I'm not aware of their balance sheet. I'm not aware of their cash flow. I'm not aware of their debt. I'm aware of their Bitcoin holdings, and I could be like, I value Bitcoin, at $1 million. Is that their holdings today are not valued at $1 million. I think that you're seeing what would be a lot of speculative inflows into the miners currently now going towards things like Bitmine, right? What's a better near-term opportunity to be looking here to take Ethereum treasury company that is out there with some big players bidding up Ethereum, or a Bitcoin miner, and um, as well as obviously MicroStrategy has taken a lot of what would be flows into Bitcoin miners, and people like, oh, Bitcoin Treasury Company, and then it's Metaplanet, and then it's 21, and then it's this like whole hosts of Bitcoin treasury companies that people are trying to speculate in to get those quick profits. Obviously, right now that's not looking so good. So I think that this is a question of, for me, it's, in the past, going back 4 years ago, you were seeing a lot of speculative plays out on Bitcoin miners. And now that those funds are going into what appear to be more attractive plays. And you have to wonder, if you really are interested in the investment, whether or not, what's your time horizon, and whether or not you think that, well, maybe that lack of speculative interest, obviously, it may offer an opportunity or not. I'm not sure. Clean Spark was, I forget the ticker. Look at that. I mean, it looks like a massive coil taking place. I mean, it's hard not to be bullish when you're bullish on Bitcoin at this particular moment, right? And I don't feel that I have a good read on this. It feels a little fuzzy. It it looks like, I mean, don't that trend line means nothing. I don't see it whatsoever. I guess I could see it like this then. And yeah, that looks like a good looking chart to me. And you have to wonder, is it dependent on what is Bitcoin's next move here? But just look at the suppression, the coil, and it's coming to what looks like, ready for a big move up. It's a good looking chart to me. It looks better than Mara looks to me. Riot here, Clean Spark, they look like good looking charts to me. DJT for fun, right? And I don't know. I heard that, anyway. Talking about pardons. I'm waiting. It's time to put up. And if you can't put up, anyway. Dude, that's a nice trick to remember for all of us. And Tron power. Tron just got a massive, just going public. Look at that business over here. What? How did Justin Sun pull this off? I have no idea. I remember Justin when he was in like Jack Ma's like academy, up in some type of, you know, his he was like squished like this, and doing his YouTube videos and talking about, oh, I know Jack Ma, and I'm launching Tron, and it's going to go to the moon, and now he's buying bananas for $5 million duct taped to the wall and giving them away. This looks like, to me, if I had to ask you like what has happened here, it looks like pay to play. Justin Sun is one of the largest holders, if not the largest holder, of Trump coin. And now you see Justin able to take Tron public and, exit liquidity. Anyway, um, yeah, Tron is a good use case, though, from what I understand. A lot of people use it for cheap transactions abroad. It's just not something that I'm interested in. So it's a mega move. You know what, D-Power? I wish that we would have had the knowledge and foresight to be, or I don't even, it just went public, right? So, those are only for insiders. Stay away. What else is going on? Let me go ahead and let's get into the show. Let's go into the show right now and move. Oh, sorry, give me 1 second. Sorry about that. Little ruggies. Um, so Summer love here, summer lulls. Are they ahead, or are we about to defy all seasonalities and continue what has been so far the largest deviation off a 20% pullback? Well, no one's saying anyway. No one's a supporter. I'll tell you what, you want to get into it? I'll get into it right now. I'm not supportive of Operation Warp Speed. How about that? Oh, what's Operation Warp Speed? If you don't have an opinion on Operation Warp Speed, you probably shouldn't even have an opinion at all about what's taking place. But beyond that, like promises made, promises kept, where's the list? That's all that matters. You know? When we say anyway, I have no problem getting into the issues and problems of the current president, but I never did that with Biden. I never once got into all of the issues with Biden, and there were massive issues. And obviously, you're all aware of the coup that happened in the Ukraine. State Department's on tape, recorded, admitting it. And then, of course, we're all aware of the positions taken on the boards of those companies, and you know, like you can't play it both ways. You can't be against one administration and then not against the other. And that's what that I know myself that I've been very outspoken about, for example, Trump's corruption, and I have never been about Biden. So when I say anyway, that means look, I haven't gotten into it before, and I'm not going to get into it now. So let's just be very, you know, you have to be very, I guess. You know what? It was only for me personally. I don't even know why I'm sharing this. It's a little bit unrelated, but I think it's important. But whether I got tricked or not, I don't know and understand. But I was highly against the current administration up until the point that he almost got shot in Pennsylvania. And then I was like, if they're looking to take him out, then he must be on the right side, you know? Litecoin is a tough one, right? Like, what's the play with Litecoin? What would be the interest? And in the past, it was like, oh, you know, Satoshi Light. When it was launched, it was like, um, the silver to Bitcoin. Bitcoin's gold. This is silver, and Litecoin is a test net for Bitcoin, and whatever is built on Litecoin. I can't see the need and or use, and now with the mega dilution of the space, like why, right? Why? Why? I just can't. Sorry, it's LTC properties and it looks like a better chart than Litecoin. Let's go here. I just can't. I've seen a lot of friends, a lot of analysts for the past couple of years calling for the mega bull on Litecoin. It hasn't transpired. It hasn't happened. I just don't understand. And are you going to see Litecoin trading up at 250 again? Maybe if we get to a point where like it's alt season. I don't think that we're in that particular moment, and I think that anyone that owns Litecoin as a speculative investment, they're holding positions that they want to distribute into. when I look at Bitcoin, I think that there are a lot of people who are accumulating Bitcoin, and they don't, of course, at particular price points, they might look to take profits. They might look to you know, to you know, to distribute, but I think those people also do only want to sell a small portion of their Bitcoin, that they believe in Bitcoin for the long term. That's what I don't know anyone who's a believer in Litecoin and be like, I want to be holding Litecoin for the next 10 years, for the next 20 years. I don't know why they would. And I could be missing something. You know, pay as a payment processor, and I hear a lot of people talk about XRP, for example, and then I look at, you know, insiders distributing once again, as we said. I don't. I mean, Lightning Network is really fast payment processor, right? I saw that, you know, obviously we're seeing now Cash App is incorporating Bitcoin payments onto the payment processor. I've yet to seen someone do that with Litecoin, and I'm not. Look, you all know that if I'm presented with any type of information that could help me see things differently, that I'm willing to go ahead and pivot in a second. It's hard for me to be bullish on Litecoin when I just don't see it beyond a speculative investment, you know, and so I see that, you know, a few of you are definitely supportive, and that makes me say, oh, well, you know, I haven't really looked into it. I could be missing something. I don't know. I don't know. XRP. I have a lot of friends right now who, as I told you, have been taking a position into XRP, and they're you know, and I look at the price and I'm like, man, you know, XRP was just in price discovery, and then last week we saw obviously an insider dumping just an enormous amount of supply, and that's the one problem I have with XRP is anytime it rips, it's then distributed into, and anytime it rips, it's distributed into, rips, distributed into, rips, and then usually it's Ripple it's distributing into, and here you have an insider. Um, well, yeah, that's good. If you hear noise, then you have to know, Robert. One of the most important things that's ever taught on this channel is when you hear noise, you have to distinguish that this is not for you. And if all that you hear is noise, then you have to be smart enough to say that I need to focus on signal. Right now, all I'm hearing is noise, and I'm not interested. What I hear is me filtering out a bunch of noise. When looking at Riot, looking at Litecoin, looking at, and I'm trying to filter out all the noise so I could bring it back to the topic at hand. And I like that right now people are looking for speculative plays, but then you also have to wonder, what time of year is it? We're entering August. Is August normally a favorable time of year to be speculating, right? And then you like, oh, it's a time, you know, you have to put that all together. But yes, if you hear noise, just get out. Like, you could hit the thumbs down actually, so that the algo won't send you, and then get, not, or I hope you don't, Robert. I obviously hope you don't, but you know, it's very important to filter out noise. But if you're hearing noise, yeah, I like, I'm almost a little dumbfounded. I would say this is one of the most highest signal places to be. But if you hear noise, man, listen to yourself. You know, you gotta learn to trust in yourself. I'm here to help people think critically and differently, as well as to be wild things that are unattainable. A lot of people for a long time have been very, you know, supportive of Chainlink and believers in it, and you have to wonder. I mean, I know, you know, whether it's Ace, Falconet, some people here are really, really, really understand the business aspect of Chainlink, what it is they're achieving, what they're trying to achieve. I would go into the altcoin discussion and pick their brains because they really, really, really need it. So that's great into the as far as only believing in Bitcoin, you know, I don't obviously I've always been a Bitcoiner and I think and I don't want to be wrong. So I've always you could say my focus on Bitcoin has been appropriate, but you could see or you should be able to see the shifting nature that the signaling you get from me even on Ethereum. For example, you could go back a year and you won't see any Ethereum videos, but then in the last couple of weeks, I have a couple. I'm just trying to find out where maybe the other one was, but I remember it. So here we go. 7 months ago, 6 weeks ago. Look at that. We were close to the breakout. Maybe I was just chasing FOMO here. But I don't often focus on Ethereum. I think what we're seeing in Ethereum is a major change as obviously Bitmine is now entering the space. I don't think it'll be the last. And again, I've always been a proponent that what we're going to see is, the proof of stake, I believe was actually a move that is going to have ultimately is the death blow for Ethereum, but I think that price goes significantly higher and for a lot longer than people imagine before that happens. Let's focus a little on this. I want to focus on the dollar, and I want to focus on what's taking place with the dollar. I want to focus what that means potentially for Bitcoin, and I want to go ahead and tie a lot of these thoughts together. I know that the Fed is actually in the title. We have obviously as we move into next month into August 20th is the FOMC, and then right after that, is that correct? Hold on one second. Let me fact check myself over here and move over. And August 20th is FOMC, and then right after that we move into Jackson Hole. So the Fed is definitely going to be into play this month. Expectations are that the Fed remains on hold into the fall. However, obviously you're seeing a lot of pressure being put on Powell, and whether or not Powell is going to go ahead and you know we have to listen to what the chairman has to say. It's very important, and we're going to find out whether or not he's going to double down here, play ball. That's in focus this month. And let me come back over to here. Dollar. Why does Jordan have over here? $1.9 million Bitcoin. I'm looking over here at the return over here. That's a 1,400% return. A lot of people remember what it was like for recent sharp appreciations of Bitcoin, right? And when you look over, you could talk about 2020, 2021. 400% moves is a big move, right? Looking at Bitcoin making, some pretty tremendous gains. 2017, that was obviously some tremendous gains. But most people, a lot of people, it was as price was rising, got really involved. This is kind of really why I want to bring the conversation before I get into the breakdown that's occurring on gold, the potential breakout that's taking place on the dollar, what it means for risk assets. But really where I want to bring the focus is over to here. And, and I think it's appropriate as we're looking at altcoins. I don't think so. I don't think the 10-year breaks then. I want to go off on the tangent with Robert first. What a dispersed way for me to be looking. Today. You got to love it. You got to go with the flow. I don't care. It's all good. What the way I look at this is we're in a massive coil, And if you ask me which way we're going to break, I've been saying I think it breaks to the upside. I think the upside goes far higher than most people believe and then winds up ultimately being a massive grab that then takes us eventually even breaking down the other way. But a lot has been changing with the, I guess, like, look, the chairman is like, listen, I think that, tariffs are inflationary. I think that inflation is transitory and I'm late. He was late, so I guess that's a good name. Not in cutting rates right now, although he says if it weren't for the uncertainty of tariffs, he would have already cut rates. Which why I don't really know, because everyone who supports him not cutting rates is like the economy is booming. Why cut rates now? Um, Either way, what I'm getting at over here is that if Powell is wrong, if the chairman is wrong, and if these costs are not passed on to the US consumer, and then if it doesn't actually beget more inflation, which I don't know if it's going to happen or not. I look over here and we continue to monitor what the price of oil, we look at true inflation, and as we begin to get more clarity, are we going to find out that Powell's right? And if he is right, and if this does become not just a one-off bump in prices, but inflationary, and which the growth could, right? If we look at is the government able to pull off this mega growth burst? And if they do, that's going to be inflationary, you know? And I'm just trying to find out reasons that the 10-year could break out to the upside. Could it be that the Fed cuts? What happens if the Fed cuts and you see, just like last time they cut, 10-year, 20-year, 30-year rise? Maybe like Fed cutting is perceived by market participants as this is going to actually spur a lot of growth, and we're looking at they're never going to reach their target, and we're going up. That I'm trying to just at the end of the day, it's more about what price is doing and managing risk around pivotal areas. But at the same time, you want to have a thought process about what could potentially make it go bid. What about the other way? What could cause a massive bid into bonds at this particular moment? If the market is not crashing, I know that you all think, well, I would say that lightly. I know a good portion of you think that risk is about to get wrecked. I don't think that. And I point to it was just wrecked in April. And since April, there's actually a lot of further clarity, including the latest US EU trade deal. There continues to be a lot of clarity. And when you look at China and the US, there seems to be a lot of mutual agreement about just letting this kick down the road. Like they're not escalating. And so as far as what is going to cause this massive correction in risk, I'm having trouble seeing it right now. Of course, that's why we have our eyes open each and every day. So what could cause a major bid into bonds at this particular moment? Specifically, why potentially the Fed is getting ready to cut. The economy continues to remain strong. We watch it, we monitor it. We're watching specifically to see if the hard data falls off. It's not yet. We continue watching. So yeah, it's hard for me to have a reason to see bonds go bid at this particular point in time. Nevertheless, I made a nice little trend line, and if it breaks down, then obviously I'm just gonna make sure I'm on the right side. In between this actually breaking up or down, I imagine that we could have moves within that are, towards either end of the resistance and or support. But we just continue, as far as I see it, coiling, and I don't see any type of. I mean, maybe if you were to see like Japanese yen 30-year yields continue to be something that is this going to catch up to the market at any point in time? There are other risks. I'm focused here on the US specifically, but there are other risks out there, including like, been thinking about the Mexican peso carry trade. right? And what happens if that were to unwind? Obviously, you remember what happened recently on the Japanese yen unwind, and there's likely a lot more to go unwind. And I'm just trying to think on a more global scale about what could go wrong that could cause maybe a flight to safety into U.S. bonds. But right now, we continue to coil and we continue to watch it. Right now, actually, on this coil, we went from sell impulse, then into, I'm sorry, buy impulse, into sell impulse. We're back into a buy impulse. But I think this is the buy impulse that takes it down? Likely not. I mean, is Powell's next move going to be that? Yeah, you know what? Like they've basically wound down quantitative tightening. They're down to their last 5 billion a month, but eventually that's got to end. And we know that last time it ended, and this has been my assumption about what happens next in the cycle, is that when it ended, September 2019, Fed's balance sheet organically begins to expand and go the other way. Risk melts up. We're not at that situation yet though, and I wonder when they do stop quantitative tightening, do they just run it flat? That's something to watch out for. But it's a similar situation where you're seeing potentially, right, ETH here. Did ETH bottom out against Bitcoin now? And similar situation. Dog Nation. No, it would be a massive help. I'm trying to lean into different AI, and I say AI like this: AI, whatever, these programs, software programs, in order to help with breaking up and chaptering the discussions. We do long format here every day. They're and bring it back to Robert. Like, I hear noise at this particular moment. You have to be able to distinguish between signal and noise. This is a very different type of channel than a lot of others. Listen, if we wanted to grow an audience, then, and obviously I could grow an audience. I did it. We went from 0 to 120,000 subscribers in 1 year. And then I was like, I'm going private. Went private for 3 years, and we built. And what we built is what we utilize today, our algorithms. And this is how we trade and conquer the markets. And we do long format here though. And I think the difference between CTM and a lot of other places is that everyone within CTM, they really over time grow in immense knowledge and capability, whether it's their TA, whether their mechanical trading, whether the way they're able to take in the macro, and and that just makes us stronger as a whole. But I wish I could have a way to go ahead and make it easier for people and not have to watch a 90-minute video, but have it, titled where they could go ahead and find the parts that they're interested in. I've tried going through schedules. Today to me seems very dispersed, and I haven't even gotten into the session yet. We're an hour in, but it's kind of like we're just out there all the time, and then like when you least suspect it, a nugget's uncovered. And you don't get to uncover those nuggets without going through the process. So I wish, I wish I could make it easier, and I wish Pokey Poke that I did have a schedule or a list of items to go through. But I tell you, and I assure you, it's well worth your time, and it's time extremely well spent. And if anyone can help out with pointing me in a direction to get to help form those titles, I'm all about it. I'm really trying actively to be able to do that. Let's just check in really quick over here at what's going on, and let's start here with well, let's focus on this. We were talking about altcoins, so I'm looking at gains. I'm going to remind you really quick, right? And let's come back over to here, and you know what we do here, right? Goal 70%, getting it done, right? 70% a year, right? We have like, right, whether or not it's like the rate of monetary supply growth, call it 8%, markets, S&P 500, NASDAQ averaging roughly 7, 8, 9% a year, keeping up with that monetary growth debasement. And then we talk about, those mega growths that people are looking for, which is why a lot of people move towards speculative investments, right? Um, the lower high, right? We're into that supply. I'm going all over the place. It's just, we're going to live with the love today. I also see Bitcoin dominance here, right? Coming back down. And on the trade deal, you saw things like alts begin to pop again. So, right, you could look and you could see, this is what specifically Alexei is talking about, that double top. I like that double top here as much as this gives us an opportunity to now know when the next resumption takes place. For those who are following from afar, we don't usually focus on alts ever. We trade them. We trade a few of them. But if you remember, very recently, I went ahead and here's the video. Alts saw a bull trap 2 weeks ago. As we're into the consolidation here, right before the breakout, I brought to everyone's attention that the alts were potentially getting ready here for a really big move. Right on time, big move ensued. And then since then, this purple line up here, this is like the stop loss of when it's, this move it looks like it's rolling over. And it continues to hold over here. We now put in a lower high. By the way, if this were to enter into a big channel that's downward sloping, which some people confuse with the bull, like this one over here, and ultimately these tend to really have some big drawdowns. As you saw over here, is that going to set up again, or we continue higher? I don't know. I know that we're just, as far as a position standpoint. Oh, I don't like this at all. I'll go to alts over here. As far as a position standpoint, we continue to hold Ethereum, and it continues here to build into massive profit, coming off of a rather big upside trade on Ethereum. We just follow the momentum, and then we're looking at our alts holding. So that's where we are. Let me move over and look at this was our discretionary exit on Solana. And then we're back into it over here as we got back above the lines. Interesting. Cardano's held our discretionary line. And if it were to break, I expect that Cardano rolls over. We'll still be holding this. We would give back a lot of these gains. That's how we maneuver along a lot of the alts. Ethereum, Cardano, they give back a third of their overall profit. It's the only way they're able to hold on to those big gains over here. And I don't know. I had to tell by my voice, and my voice is it's not confident. It's unsure. And here we are. Let's move over. Let's jump back over here to gold. And gold right now, I see a lot of people out there accumulating gold up here. I think over the long term, that's a really good, smart thing to do. We're seeing gold put in a pretty big sell impulse today, right? And not only that, this sell impulse that it's putting in today is coming off what was, I'm going to draw it like this. This was a buy impulse that we've been navigating. It's just a break even, right? It's a buy impulse. And you had the breakout, retest, resumed up. It got caught up in the supply, much like the altcoin market right now, right? Altcoins over here coming into that little bit of supply. Zoom out a little bit with you, come to a higher time frame, and you can see that, we have all of this supply. And it still looks super bullish to me. And a breakout above all of this that really potentially gets to send it. But caught up in that supply. Now, the difference between alts and gold is massively overbought. And what are we talking about overbought? and just come down and just remind you all here on the monthly that you could see that we've here since April have been overbought on the RSI on the monthly chart. And if you go back to 1973, it was the last time that gold had remained overbought. You got March, around the seasonalities around the same time, into April, May, and then it pulled back. 3 months overbought, very similar situation. This is the most overbought it's ever been on a monthly time frame. And then here you had a 22% pullback, which is nothing, but it's super healthy. You saw the RSI go back down. You saw once that price was able to make a higher high than where it peaked on the RSI, new leg up continued. I'm super bullish in this, in so much as in March 2023, we called the breakout of what we called into the super cycle of gold. And we said, listen, it's not stopping at 2,500. I'll see you at 5,000. And that's just for us to reevaluate. I think that gold, Bitcoin, both of them are being repriced, not with one-offs, but in slow motion right over here. I think that gold is being right now affected by either what's taking place with I'll call it a de-escalation or a resolution of trade deals being ironed out here. Mega trade deal between the EU and the US, and dollar going bid here. And I think it offers and brings up the potential for some really nice opportunity. And if we are able to get a breakdown over here, like I expect this breakdown could take us somewhere in the neighborhood, right? Of somewhere between, I put it out on the Twitter earlier, but somewhere between, let's call it just above 3,000 and into to 3,150. And that doesn't seem like a big move whatsoever. We're way, 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 way overbought, and it would be really healthy. Could we get a bigger move than people are expecting? That's a decent move, by the way. A 15 to a 9% move. That's a healthy correction. I'm all about it, and I think that would be an opportunity to dollar cost average into. And I don't think that it couldn't go lower. It could go lower if you break that bit of if we broke down over here, or we were to lose this area, which is a pretty big correction, 15%. That's all that gold corrected during the March 2020 global lockdowns. But if it were to lose this area, resistance, support, $29,050, at that point, it opens up the door for a bigger correction. And I think that this would be another place, whether it's 27.50 to 28.50, another opportunity to dollar cost average into again. So I don't know that those two opportunities will present themselves or not, but in looking ahead, I would say that if they did open up, then those become opportunities for people that do believe in gold over let's call it the foreseeable future, right? And we did a very good video on this right over here. This is one that got, so I'm looking for the real-time pricing right over here. Real-time revaluation of gold and Bitcoin. If you want to go ahead and watch this video to get a larger perspective, long-term perspective of expectations and what we're talking about here right now. And yeah, I think those are opportunities. And what about silver right now? If gold's rolling over, is silver going to roll over? And we're looking at the weekly on silver as we left off on Friday, and why I even believe it's possible to get further wicks over here. I think that if we do test up, it likely will be a wick. And yeah, from that doesn't look inviting, those type of reversal patterns that we're seeing here on silver. And guess what? Like a reversion to the mean right over here that would be an opportunity for people as they're seeing silver begin to rise and like, oh, this is a smarter opportunity. And you just gotta wait and pick your spots. And if you get them ahead of time, you want to be ready for them. And if you don't, that's okay. It's the markets. There's always opportunity. There's always going to be another opportunity. I think you're talking about gold. I don't. And what about as far as gold on like, wait, wrong. Where do we resume at? We just had this, obviously, this buy impulse. You know, I don't see one developing here right now. If we were to trade back above this trend line that we're breaking down from right now, that would take me more neutral, right? I wouldn't want to be holding a short position, nor have I mentioned anything about a short position. I'm talking about if this move plays out per expectations, it opens up the opportunity for a dollar cost average to buy for longer term. I wouldn't be looking to even take a short here. Why would you short strength, right? And gold is obviously in a mega move, and you know, is risk to the upside? No, not right now. Risk is to the downside here, but you're looking at for an opportunity, I believe. Let's bring this back over here to the dollar and what's taken place as the dollar is. Oh, I wanted to bring it back to the dollar, but I don't even think if I reminded you all, as people right now are looking at that speculation, and I'm like, you know what, like, 70% CTM, let's go. And you talk a 5-year period. That's why I had that Bitcoin chart originally showing you, like, from Bitcoin where it is today to 1.9. Do I think it's going there? Yeah, I think it's going there. When it gets there, what do you think? Like, but I don't think it's going there tomorrow, by the way. And I do think that people's expectations into this is a tough one. I don't think that Bitcoin is going to 1.9 million anytime soon. And at the same time, I think that people's expectations of what's going to happen into the end of the decade are also subdued. So I don't know what to say, but I'll tell you this: why I'm just using 1400% as a wildly high expectation or return. If Bitcoin, or when Bitcoin is able to make a 1400% gain from where it is today. And I've heard people, and I think they're right, a lot of people talk about, like, and feel that they missed Bitcoin. And I think that, people who have been into Bitcoin, let's say, like, for the last 6 years, between 2019 and today, I think that people between today and the end of the decade are likely going to see equivalent, or if not further upside than that. Just to give me an idea of what that means, and you could see that that's 1,000% return in the where I'm talking about. And yeah, $1 million Bitcoin, from where we are today. And when is that going to happen? And will it happen by the end of the decade? I very much think it happens before that. I know that's an outlier, and if you wanted to know, like, when that would be almost a certainty, the highest degree probability I could offer of $1 million Bitcoin is going to be into 2031, into the summer and fall of 2031 is when I believe is, by then, if it hasn't, like, that would be like that would be the lowest, the furthest timeline I could give for that to occur. The furthest, obviously, this is dependent on the future adoption of Bitcoin, which is accelerating, and it's also dependent on the further devaluation of the underlying, which is also not only going to be accelerating, but we're going to have a major devaluation before then. Right now, they're trying to grow their way out of it. When that fails, we move to the next phase, which is going to be the printers are running again. We're far from there right now, but we're not so far off in the greater scheme of things. Anyway, If you were able to follow my thought process throughout all of that, God bless you. That's why you're able to deal with me and stay with me. But what I'm getting at is, and just pointing out to you clearly, between now and the end of the decade, over the next 5 years, I think offers the same opportunity as you saw from 2019 until today, which is, a 10x. And I think that anyone right here today that is looking to go ahead and over the next 5 years, save in Bitcoin and do it, that you have to do it. I believe that strongly. I believe that instead of thinking Bitcoin is at $120,000 and it's too expensive and I missed it, I think that you should have the same perspective is as if it were at $10,000 and then you have from 10,000 till today and you have that same opportunity. So I think it's extremely, extremely early. However, it's not the same opportunity. That's, you know, going from a 10x. Here's the difference. I'm showing you here 5 years. I guess if you go to 4 years, it would be, it's not a 10x. Let's go past there. If you agree with me that the potential that Bitcoin, could potentially over the next 5-6 years do a 10x, which I believe so. What happens after there? Which is 1 year later. Do you think that 1 year later and Bitcoin, like, do you think that you're going to see, over a 6 year period, a 2,400% return? Or do you think that you're going to see over a 7 year period a 4,000% return? Or do you think that over an 8 year period you're going to see a 7,000% return? You think that's crazy? I mean, again, this is TQQQ on the daily time frame. It's our worst performing asset by a lot. And if you look over the last, 500 years, if you look over the last 5 years, 750% return, 25% drawdown. It's a lot different than our other opportunities. And I'm not talking about Bitcoin and crypto, but what I'm saying is that our ability on stocks offers the same opportunity collectively. This is our diversification. It's through templates. It's through our, being able to look at Bitcoin and select crypto, Bitcoin, Ethereum, Cardano, Solana, along with the stocks on the daily. And then you look for what is getting it done over here. And that is the mindset that people need to have in order to be able to execute in these markets. I wanted so much to get into the dollar today, as the dollar is really breaking out over here. So when I say the dollar is breaking out, let me find a dollar chart over here, jump over to it with you. Dispersed today, I guess we're gonna say. I hope you all love it. Never the same. Why am I having such the rough? Opportunity. There we go. So look at the massive bid into the dollar today. By the way, this was the last sell impulse I took right over here. Getting above here, gonna have to flip flop. We have a line like this. I'm just using this to keep it easy here at 99. Ace was looking at the breakout. This was the buy impulse we took. Then the sell impulse right here below the purple line. Ace was noticing that if you extended the dotted line, the trend line out, as we were into it in real time, that's actually just a retest. It turns out that Ace is looking like he nailed it over here. And then I'm saying to you, if we break back above here, at this particular point in time. It is strong dollar bid again. It's coming into a place in time where the dollar seasonality suggests that this is the most favorable time of the whole year through November for dollar to be bid and long. It's happening at a point in time where you're seeing, obviously, the US and the EU ink a trade deal, and the dollar is responding favorably out of it. And it's going to jump down and show you this chart over here. And this is the DXY at the bottom. And if you come to January, of 2025, you could see that the DXY came off 10%, 11% in that period. And in that same period, you saw the Bitcoin go sideways. And obviously, myself and each one of you would have guessed that if you told me the dollar was coming off 10%, here's the dollar coming off 10%, here's Bitcoin going buck wild. That's what my expectation would have been. It's not what happened. And instead, you saw Bitcoin consolidate and go sideways. I don't think the case could be made that since Bitcoin bottomed in July, since the dollar bottomed in July, so you have July 1st, and then you go look at Bitcoin and you go to July 1st. Let me get a better chart of Bitcoin. Here's Bitcoin in July 1st, where the dollar bottomed. So since the dollar has bottomed, is when Bitcoin has been able to make its leg up. And if I would have told you that if the dollar is strengthening, that was going to be bullish for Bitcoin and altcoins, you would probably say, I don't know about that. And if you remember, I'm going to try for tomorrow to find the Twitter post. When I told you, watch what happens when the dollar begins to strengthen, that's when you're going to see risk really begin to run. Is that going to happen? I think that's what's going to happen. And you might say, how does that work? That's going to put like pressure on global liquidity if the dollar goes bid. I can remember a time when the dollar went bid in a similar place. You saw earlier, Robert was bringing up a similar situation we were with QT getting ready to come to an end. And I could go over here to this period over here in September 2019 when that began to happen. And up until everything broke down and they locked down the globe, you were seeing the dollar rising, gold rising, and Bitcoin rising, and obviously equities melting up. So is that a similar period where I could point to where I could say, well, here's the dollar going bid and strong, but we're seeing risk running? Maybe. I'm more making the observation off of in this particular period when I would expect if the dollar broke down that Bitcoin is really going to do really well. It didn't. But then I could also point to this point over here. You can see that the dollar, traded from 100 to 109, was up 9%. And why it was up 9%, Bitcoin was really running. And this is not the first time that's happened. Here's dollar strength all through late 2015 into and throughout 2016. And during that time of dollar strength, Bitcoin is going beautiful. Bitcoin is running really, really hard. It's doing a 10x. And of course, when the dollar fell off, that's when Bitcoin really began to the bull of all bulls was running, which is why I was setting up a similar expectation to occur over here. It didn't happen. We saw the dollar really weak and Bitcoin go nowhere. Since the dollar has bottomed in July, Bitcoin has been making a leg up. And now we're looking at what looks to me to be, this is coming off not just the technicals, but this is coming off the seasonalities, and this is coming off of the technicals. And if we get a break above 99, that sets Bitcoin here. The dollar into, I'm going to call it a counter trend trade. The dollar's off 11%. The trend is down. This would be counter trend. I don't know if it would break this area, the resistance here and or here. I would expect this counter trend move eventually finds some resistance and then goes down. And if I was a betting man, do I think the dollar a year from now is lower than the July low? I think there's a good chance that could happen. If I zoom out, is the dollar in an uptrend or a downtrend? Yeah, I think it's still a downtrend. Here's Alexei didn't like that lower high in alts. Here's a really big lower high on the dollar. I think this is a downtrend. I think we're in a, setting up for a counter trend move. That counter trend could strengthen the dollar in the near term. And if that's happening, I don't see that being an obstacle to risk right now. Stronger dollar, stronger buying power, lower stocks, including I don't know, it's tough to say. Again, you could go back to that point you were pointing out in September 2019 and 2000. Here's the dollar in 2019. Let me show you. Or since we're on the DXY. So September 2019, I guess that's not really a strong dollar. That's the dollar before the, into the global lockdowns over here. It's really flat. It's not a stronger dollar. It's not a stronger dollar. I mean, yes, the dollar is higher September 19th, the day that they stopped QT and begin balance sheet expansion to where it ended up prior to the crisis in February, but barely. But the NASDAQ during this period melted up. So is the NASDAQ really melting up in that period? I'm trying to find you the new Q. Let's look at the NQ during that same period. So here's September 2019. Here's February. The dollar was off for a large portion of this period. I mean, it was range bound, but NASDAQ melted up. I don't know. I can't necessarily say that a stronger dollar in this particular moment is going to be. If you look at what's happened in recent times, the strong dollar here has seen, right? This was a very strong dollar period. It was very good for stocks. So I'm not going to make that. Largely the EU, though, and like, here you go. I'm glad you brought this up. Let me come over here. Thank you very much. Actually, let's look at the dollar versus a basket of currencies, and the dollar, the DXY is made up of primarily, that most heavy weighted is the euro US dollar. And whether, like last I knew, it made up 52%, is it probably still around 50%? It probably is. But it's not just the EU that's taken the hit since the trade deal. It's the dollar strengthening. And you could see it as the Swiss franc, right? The Mexican peso, the British pound, Brazilian real, Japanese yen, which is the second highest weighting of the DXY. But it's not just the EU. I mean, the EU trade deal and the euro that's getting hit versus the dollar today. The dollar is actually making gains across all of FX. So this is a dollar move. Great point, but this is a dollar move. That's what caused September 19th is where the overnight repo rate spiked above 9%. That's when the Fed had to cut QT. That's when they began balance sheet expansion. And we've seen signs of SOFR spiking, like signs of the canary in the coal mine, but everything seems well under wraps. And then that's why I was bringing up the repo market earlier in the session, as well as all the new issuances. This seems like a dollar move here. Again, it seems like a counter trend move. And then what about this? That doesn't work for me. Is that a bottoming happening? A rounded bottom? I don't know. But I do think that the dollar here is looking to put in what is going to likely be a strong counter trend move over here. Yeah, I like this ambitious self-educators. Ambitious self-educators. That's why you all are CTM strong. And there's no doubt that without having that type of character makeup, that there's no way that the hive mind would have been able to produce and create what we have. If you remember when I started this whole journey out with all of you, I was like, listen, I'm going to share everything I know about the markets with you all, and eventually this is going to become this giant feedback loop of iron sharpens iron. And then when you've seen the CTM be able to go out, like, it's absolutely beautiful. Thank you, Robert, for everything. Thank you, everyone, for dealing with the disperseness of today. But it's just another day. There's like, you know what? I think in the end, even though like boom, 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 didn't flow like that, which were my expectations, but I think highly, highly valuable, and that's why we put in the time. Let's call it a session for today. As we went 90 minutes, and we'll continue again tomorrow. Have a beautiful day, everyone. God bless you. I'll see you all back on the inside.